We are on broadcast mode. Welcome, everybody. I can see people starting to join us. So I will wait until the participant count increases. We're already at 40 people in the attendee. Oh, now 50. So I'm not going to say too much so everyone is in, but we do have our very special guest, Ferne Pearlstein, with us. Ferne is live from Brooklyn. Which part of Brooklyn?
I live on the border of Park Slope and Gowanus.
Okay, so my daughter Emma lives in where is she? Crown Heights.
Crown Heights, next door.
And
The
she
next over.
she just graduated from Pratt, which I think is right near where
Congratulations.
you are. So hope everything is nice. Nice weather today.
Gorgeous.
No one breaking windows. No looting today. Peaceful protesting, hopefully. I'm still waiting for people to attend. We are at close to 100 already. Okay, everybody. It is 12 and 54 seconds. So we'll give the latecomers an opportunity to arrive as I do our general welcome. Welcome. Happy Sunday, everybody. This is the second Sunday of June, the best month of all, and not just because it's my birthday month, but everybody knows June is just a month of hope. And you're in the right webinar, on the right station if you're here for The Last Laugh, Exploring Taboos in Comedy with award-winning filmmaker and cinematographer Ferne Pearlstein, live from Brooklyn, New York. This program is sponsored by the Community Scholar Program. We are celebrating our 20th year of bringing great speakers to Orange County, California. With our new platform on Zoom, we are now reaching much further than Orange County. We have guests with us from all around the country and the world. We are thankful and appreciative of Temple Beth Shalom of Needham, Massachusetts for co-sponsoring this program. Welcome everybody from Boston. And we are honoring Dahlia and Noah Taft. Those of you in Orange County may know the Tafts. They are very involved in our local Jewish community. Noah Taft is a former Hollywood screenwriter. He worked in television up in LA, and he's actually written a contemporary movie about the Holocaust called Neat and Al. Maybe we'll get it to the screen someday. Upcoming programs I wanted to mention, Monday, actually, the 15th, we are going to focus on racism, Jewish history, and American Jewish history with Mark Dollinger. A lot of people have signed up for that. Many of you participated in our program with Peter Geffen this past week and had questions about Jews, Black Lives Matters, racism in America. So we're having a special program tomorrow, and I believe it's at 2:30 p.m., which is an unusual time for us, so please note that. Tuesday, June 16th, Masada, Last Stronghold of the Jewish Resistance Against Rome with Professor Jody Magnus. Thursday, June 18th, Exploring Biblical Stories Through the Eyes of Rembrandt with Liz Diamond. Then next Sunday, we're back here, The Significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls for Judaism and Christianity with Dr. Adolfo Reutman, who is in charge of the Dead Sea Scroll Project in Israel. So a variety. That's what we do at CSP, and I thank you for joining us. Our program today, what we'll do is we'll have the Q&A button very active down below. So as we go along, I hope you will send us your questions to ask, and I can ask them, or maybe some of you will get on to ask the questions as well. We're going to have, it's a multimedia presentation, so we're going to have a Q&A with Ferne. We're going to show video clips that we're going to discuss, and there's going to be polling as well. So get ready, get your fingers all ready. This is active. This is not passive learning today. Let me say a little bit about Ferne, and then we'll get right into the Q&A. So Ferne is a prize-winning filmmaker and cinematographer whose work has been screened and broadcast around the world. A distinguished member of the documentary branch of the Academy of Motion Pictures and Science, and a 2018 inductee into the Brooklyn Jewish Hall of Fame, Ferne has postgraduate degrees in documentary from Stanford University and the International Center of Photography. And as a cinematographer, she has shot films around the world from Haiti, Uganda, Guyana to Burma, where she snuck her 16-millimeter camera into the rebel bases of the Karen Liberation Army. In 2004, she won the Sundance Cinematography Prize and is one of only a few women in Kodak's on-film campaign. Ferne has 4 films that premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival, including her most recent feature, The Last Laugh, which was released in over 25 cities, broadcast on PBS's Independent Lens, after screening at 100 film festivals worldwide. As a result, she has become a recognized speaker on humor in the Holocaust and has now been called upon to discuss humor as it relates to COVID-19. most recently, Ferne was selected as one of 8 documentary filmmakers from around the globe by the UN and Google to do a series of PSAs that were set to premiere at Tribeca and Cannes in 2020. So, Ferne, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. We have about 140 people are now in the audience. That's actually 140 screens. I would say we're getting close to 200 people. As I mentioned, you've got both coasts represented very well, California and the East Coast. So I wanted to start with a few questions, but I thought actually, everyone bear with us because we're going to be playing videos. I thought I would start with just the trailer for the film. Then we'll go into some Q&As, and then we'll go into some actual parts of the film. I hope many of you had a chance to watch the film. We put it up for free on Thursday. It'll be available through Wednesday. So if you haven't had a chance or you want to rewatch it, you can use the special code and the access that I shared with you. If you didn't get the code or the access, you can email me, ARIEKATZ, the number 18, @gmail.com, and I'll send it to you after the program. So bear with us. We're going to try this. We're going to share screen, and we're going to watch the trailer.
Can't hear you. I think you might be muted.
No, I am muted. I said I was sharing the screen and it wasn't appearing, so I'm going to try it again. So hold on for 1 second. Okay, now I see it.
Jews have been sent to assassinate Hitler.
The doctor arrives, and who is it? It's Dr. Mengele.
Oh my God, that's awful and hilarious. It's awful hilarious.
Subjects come up that are seemingly inappropriate for comedy, and that's the place that's the most interesting to explore.
You don't want to walk out on stage and go, let's talk about Auschwitz. No one's getting laid after that show.
Are there things that go over the line? Yeah, I'm sure that there are.
If I was standing online naked for the gas chambers, would I hold my stomach in?
Whoa! Humor healed us. My mother would laugh like I never saw her laugh.
The Holocaust is not funny, but survival, there can be humor in that.
That was how my mother spoke. For you, I lived through Hitler, you can't make the bed.
Without humor, I don't think we would have survived.
Did you talk about how funny the camp was?
Oh, God, yes. We laughed to say, ha, 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 ha. You'll get you there. It's much more fun to laugh than not to laugh.
By ridiculing the Nazis, he was taking away their power.
You're ashamed that you laughed at it, but you're laughing because it's like you can't help yourself.
Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing.
Comics have to tell us who we are, where we are, even if it's in bad taste.
It's important to talk about things that are taboo. Otherwise, they just stay in this dark place and they become dangerous.
You cannot live in the shadow. I enjoy life. Could Hitler imagine that I will survive and have 3 great-grandchildren? I mean, that's my revenge.
Okay, we're back. Hopefully that worked. I'm still working on screen share, and we'll do a better job with the next clips. So here are some questions.
Okay.
I guess the first question is, why did you decide to make this film? There have been many films on the Holocaust. There's films that are still coming out about the Holocaust, which is great. This one is unusual, and that's humor. What motivated you to make this film?
Well, that's a really good question. When I was still a documentary photographer in the early 90s, I was with a friend. We were in Miami. I was doing a photo essay there. And I was with a group, and we were given a tour of the Holocaust Memorial in Miami that was just built. It was brand new. And there was a survivor that was giving the tour, and my friend and I had just read Art Spiegelman's Mouse. You know, it just won the Pulitzer Prize. It was, you know, there had been nothing like it before then because, you know, it was the first graphic novel. And we started a conversation asking the elderly survivor what she thought of it. And of course, her reaction was, you know, there's nothing funny about the Holocaust. You can't cover it in the funny pages, because then it was like the only comics were the comic strips in the Sunday papers. And we had a really interesting conversation with her about, you know, was it funny or was it just the comic form? And, you know, yes, in this part of the story in Mouse where it's about his father and him living together, you know, years later, there might have been funny moments, but that it wasn't funny when he was depicting the camps. And so my friend and I, you know, I went off to film school, he went off to his own thing, but in the process of his studies, he wrote this 25-page academic paper, basically, you know, like asking, is it okay? Was it ever okay? And the paper studied, you know, humor in the camps, in the DP camps, in the ghettos, and there were all these examples of it. So when I bumped into him again in 1993, he handed it to me and said, make this into a movie. So that was the origins of, you know, The Last Laugh. That's what the paper was called. When he handed it to me, I knew that to make this into a movie, I'd have to open it up to post-war humor. And very controversial. That was 1993. It took me until 2011 to be able to raise money for the film.
Wow. What was the budget for the film?
It was a lot. You know, I filmed, you know, for over 3 years, and a lot of, you know, comedians, both in New York and LA, and it took years to get the trust of certain comedians, as you can imagine. I happen to be somebody that is the producer, the director, the cinematographer, the editor. I own the camera. I edit it on my computer. So I was able to make it for a lot less than I would have, but it was, you know, the budget itself was over $1 million.
And did you get the money from friends and family? Were you able to get it from, you know, how did you raise the money?
You know,
I asked, as I mentioned to you in the pre-show, that my friend Noah Taft is making a movie, and it's such a challenge to get any funding for any movie because it's a very risky venture. And then when you throw in that it's a Holocaust film or humor on the Holocaust, I'm sure it was very tough. So just that's why I asked the question.
Very tough. I was a finalist in 5 of some of the biggest documentary film grants out there, including one that's geared just towards the Holocaust, you know, and one that's geared just towards Jewish studies. And I kept going through the process and getting pushed to the next level. And I think even when I was able to show them a rough cut of the film, I don't think anybody could ever imagine what the audience response would be. So it was just too hard to get money the traditional route, which is, you know, how documentaries are often paid for. And it was one person. One person came in and said, will this amount get you started? And then I kept pushing along, and she, you know, kept helping me until, so that's why it was a film that she was able to, you know, constantly help out. She's not somebody that generally gives money to films, but she believed in it. It was, you know, very much, you know, a lot of the different things on many levels that she thinks about, and she was able to help. But that meant I only took the money to keep shooting and keep getting it done, and never paid myself, essentially.
How long did it take from when you started your first shooting to finishing the project?
My first shoot was October of 2011, and it premiered at Tribeca in April of 2016.
Wow. Did you, well, let's talk about the name of the film, The Last Laugh. Tell me about how you came to that name and what it means to you.
Well, my friend handed me the paper. He had called it The Last Laugh.
Ah, okay, right.
He you know, liked the double entendre of the name. And I didn't always know if that's what I was going to use, but it worked, and people really responded well to it.
And if you watch the film, if you've watched it, the whole idea of The Last Laugh is in there at the end. It comes up. So I don't want to spoil it, I guess. Watch the film. How hard or how easy or hard was it to get all these comedians? I mean, I assume Mel Brooks was one of the most important comedians to get there. He has a lot of screen time here.
Yeah.
How did you get them, and then what happened? What was the process?
Well, So when I first compiled my list of who had to be in the movie, I had 3 comedians on it. Mel Brooks had to be in it. Sarah Silverman had to be in it because she covers so much of this sort of humor. And Joan Rivers. And we were actually scheduled to film Joan Rivers like the October 1st, she died in the middle of September. Right. But in a way, we were able to still, the beauty of what the film turned into in the editing was I was still able to use pertinent clips and stuff and work people in. So often when people talk to me, they think that there are certain people in the film that I interviewed that I didn't. So, but I really felt like I could not make the film without Sarah and Mel. And when people say to me, was it, did anybody say no? I often get that question, and I always joke that everybody said no. Nobody said yes right away. I mean, I got a lot of, come back to me when somebody else says yes, or when so-and-so says yes. And basically, my husband, who's my producing partner, Robert Edwards, he's a screenwriter, and he was working with an agent at CAA. And when we got the money, it was like, okay, now we can start. We had been researching it for years. We knew what we wanted to do. We gave a list about 125 comedians to his agent with the few on top that we were like, we have to make it with them. And he looked at the list. He said, give me a half hour. He calls us back in a half hour and he says, okay, Rob Reiner said he'll do it a week from Tuesday.
Right.
We didn't know. We didn't have a crew. We didn't have, anything ready to go. And we got it together to go to LA. But I also knew I had the money at this point for the first time. I wasn't just going to go all the way there, spend all that money just to do this one interview. So I scrambled to see who else we could get based on the power of that, because Rob Reiner was one of the most incredible gets we could get. And he spans so many generations in terms of like who it helps us to have and how supportive it was to have him. And at the same time, I had been researching people because I always knew that this was a story that was going to have a lot of comedian interviews, but I needed a story. I needed something to cut those interviews to make it feel not just like a talking heads film. And I, for years, had been struggling over what that was going to be. And so when I saw I was going to be in LA, I called this woman, Hanala Stadner, who wrote the book. My parents went through the Holocaust and all I got out of it was this lousy t-shirt. I told her I was coming to LA. What could I interview her? Yes. And she totally agreed. And then I said, can you help me find other people? And she said, well, what are you looking for? I said, well, I'm looking to speak to a survivor who thinks it's okay to laugh. I want to speak to a survivor who doesn't think it's okay to laugh. I want to speak to a child of survivors, at least one, because I had been finding that there was this very, very dark, closed sense of humor there. Like jokes that maybe amongst each other they could poke fun at, like what it was like to live with survivor parents, but very protective. So it was hard to like talk about those jokes. It was hard to share those jokes. So she said, oh, I have the perfect mother and daughter for you. Renee Firestone, goes around the world. She's an anti-genocide activist. She's incredible. And her daughter started second generation Los Angeles. They're the perfect people. I got on the phone with them within a half an hour and I was like, they're the heart and soul of my film.
So I think we'll do a little bit more about Renee and Claire in a bit. So stay tuned, everybody. But I was going to ask you if there's any particular comedian that you wished was in the film. And so you mentioned Joan Rivers. Anybody else that you had hoped to be in there?
I didn't finish answering that question. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked.
Okay.
But, as I said, everybody said no. So I had to keep finding ways in. And if I interviewed this person, I could get that person. And it was like a complete puzzle. Finally, I was able to get Mel Brooks, which was a miracle.
Right.
For this film, and what was interesting is the hardest person for me to get was Sarah Silverman. She was so hard and fine. And she had an agent at CAA and we went to him and we said, we can't get to her manager. We can't get her. Can you give us any advice? He said, she's not going to listen to me. If her manager won't let you in, the only way you'll get her is if Mel Brooks asks her. I was like, oh, I interviewed Mel Brooks, but we're not friends.
Right.
I don't know how that's going to work, but I wrote him. I sent him the clip between her and him, where, you know, you see her sort of roasting him at his AFI award. And he wrote her and he said, I don't do much, but I thought this was worth doing. Take a look at how good we are in it together and see if you'd like to do it too. And she said yes immediately.
That's awesome.
So,
she is very important in the movie.
She's very
and Mel Brooks, they represent kind of the different edges of what you're trying to get at, which we're, stay tuned guys, we're going to get into some clips and get into the meat of the discussion very shortly. One last question before we get there. How close is the final film to your initial vision of what you wanted it to be?
So close. It was something we were talking about before this all started. You know, I shoot film. Because I shoot in film, I have to think things through. I mean, the only thing I couldn't have anticipated was the Renee story, like that story arc, because I didn't know what that was going to be, but it still fell in line with how I wanted to interweave these two things that could have felt like two different movies. Okay. But it's very similar to what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I would assume, having never made a movie myself, that movies do not end up the way that you envisioned them in the first place. That's very interesting that this came out exactly or very close to what you envisioned. Okay, so now we're going to get to the participatory part, the multimedia participatory part. I'm going to put up our first poll. Hopefully it works. I'm asking all the attendees to vote. And there's going to be 3 polls if things work out right. So let me get the first poll up there. Then we're going to watch a clip, and then we're going to have a discussion, and you guys can submit your questions as well. So when I watched your film and read about you and the process and questions people have asked, and I divided the film into 3 parts or 3 aspects when it comes to comedy in the Holocaust. And the first aspect was, I thought the easiest question to ask. Is it okay to use comedy about Germans, Nazis, and or Hitler with respect to World War II, as opposed to comedy directly on the Holocaust? That's a piece you explore in the film. We'll watch a clip in a second. But what I want to do is I want to launch the poll, and I want to see what our audience has to say about it. So audience, please vote. Is it okay? You only have 2 answers to choose from on this poll. Yes, I have no problem with this. Anything goes. Or no, I don't think any of this is funny, and we should not be making humor out of Nazis, Hitler, or anything related to Germans in World War II. So people are voting. By the way, I don't know if you can see, Ferne, we have 160 people in our attendee list. So that's, again, close to 200 people when you add them. And, you know, the vote is coming in. Can you see the vote on your screen, Ferne?
Interesting.
Okay. So I thought actually it would be almost 100%, to be honest with you, 100%. Sure, go ahead. Open up whatever you want on Germans and Nazis. So when we get to the discussion point, if you're part of the 15% that say no, I'm really interested to know why you say no. So let's, I'm going to keep the poll going. I hope it will not interfere with our, you know what? I'm going to have to close the poll because I don't want to interfere with our video, and I'm worried it will. So I'll give you guys another 10 seconds to vote. Okay, so right now we have 106 people have voted and said no problem, anything goes, and 20 people, so 16% said no, under no circumstances. Okay, so take that in. Let's watch this clip. Hopefully it'll work, and then we will have a discussion about it. Okay, share results. So I'm sharing the results. So you now all should have the results. And I'm going to close this. Okay, let's do this again. And I'm going to try to maximize the screen on the second video.
Is that who I think it is?
Yes, that's Adolf Hitler in a whole movie.
Sounds like Mel Brooks.
Anything I could do to deflate Germans, anything, I did. Peeping Times, home movies of Hitler. I was there with Eva Braun.
How did you do?
It was a bug.
A bug. You killed a bug.
Killed the bug.
A living thing, you just take its life away?
She said, it's just a bug. It doesn't make any... I said, well, why don't you ask the bug's family how they feel?
You just don't kill things. What's the matter with you?
You can do jokes about Nazis, but if you say Holocaust, then it becomes bad taste.
That's the thing. There's tons of Nazi jokes. It's like there's nothing taboo about making a Nazi joke. Bugs Bunny was making fun of Nazis. The Three Stooges were making fun of Nazis. The Marx Brothers were making fun of Nazis. And this is during World War II.
Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler!
Heil myself.
Anyone who's in a position of extreme authority is great to make fun of because they're pompous. There is an arrogance to being in that position.
Humor is the weapon of the weak. Think about the things that we make jokes about. We make jokes about our bosses, we make jokes about death. You know, when I was in the army, we made jokes about our commanders. Our commanders didn't need to make jokes about us. They could just order us to do whatever they wanted us to do.
Nazi jokes, easy. Making fun of bad people, easy. Making fun of good people or tragedy, that's what's hard. So making a Holocaust joke about the act of the Holocaust in general and the event is really difficult.
Do you have a Holocaust joke? Do you have a Holocaust joke?
Gee, I don't know any Holocaust. Do you know any Holocaust jokes?
No, I can't go there. I can't. I personally, who have done a musical called The Inquisition, you know, with Jews floating around and being dunked in water and tortured, I cannot go there.
Well, to me,
okay, we're back. Hopefully you could all see that. Humor or comedy is the weapon of the week from Etgar Keret. We had a chance to meet with Etgar Keret actually on a trip to Israel with a group in 2017, and I find him an incredible writer and very, very wise.
Yes.
And your perspective when you were thinking about these things, on your personal level, do you see any issues with making these kind of jokes that we just saw about the Nazis, about Germans, World War II, not the Holocaust? Do you have any reservations about that personally?
I do not.
So,
I do not, you know, it's that punching up versus punching down. I think it's okay to punch up. Now, that said, I think that I'm not personally a fan of mean-spirited jokes that are just to cut people down. Like, I think, you know, for instance, just to take an example in our present world, you know, I think that if you are going to make a joke on Saturday Night Live, let's say about our president, for instance, I think make a joke that's that satire that points at what the problems are, as opposed to maybe, you know, what he looks like, or, you know, the size of his hands, for instance. I don't think those are effective, but I don't have a problem with punching up jokes.
And those jokes and attacking Hitler and Germans, I mean, that was very contemporary to World War II. In other words, it was right away. Mm-hmm. The clips that you show us, and those clips that you put in there, how hard was it to get access to them and use them in your film? For those of you who are coming in late to this, what I'm showing now are actual clips from The Last Laugh that we're discussing. So those clips that I just showed and the clips that we will show, was it challenging to get a hold of them? Was it easy just to pay? How did you get a hold of them, and how did you find them?
I just, for years, have been doing extensive research for the film, and then, you know, I found, you know, more research. I was lucky because all of the clips in the film probably would have been, you know, $250,000, $300,000, but they were fair use. Yeah. So, you know, The only thing is that I did, you know, but you can't fair use clips in your end credits, for instance. So like at the end of the credits, I used to have from those Disney, the Warner Brothers cartoons, the like propaganda film. There used to be at the very end of the credits, you know how they used to have like the "That's all, folks" kind of thing. As
Right.
it was closing, they threw a tomato in Hitler's face. And I loved how that ended the movie, but I couldn't afford it. You know, like once it's in the credits, it's oppressively expensive.
Right. So before we go on to this next part of the discussion, I'd asked for the people who thought it was inappropriate to make humor about Nazis and Germans. And I know I didn't have three options. And in the next polls, you will have three options: yes, no, maybe. So I don't know if I was lazy or just I thought that it was a yes or no answer. Does anybody want to kind of participate in the discussion if you think that no, it's not appropriate to make fun of Nazis? You can raise your hand. I see, Helene, I see that your hand is raised. I don't know if it's about this issue, but if anybody wants to participate, you can either Q&A right now, or you can raise your hand, or we can move on to the next part of the discussion. So all I see is Helene right now. Is anybody? You don't have to participate in any way. And again, the easy way is just type in. So I guess we'll move on to the next part of the discussion. Okay, so we talked about, you know, comedy.
I see a few more people have raised their hands.
Oh, okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, so let's take a few. I'm going to allow to talk, so please make sure there's no ambient noise going on in the background. And we're going to Ellen Rothman. So, Ellen, you have to unmute, and then you can say something. Ellen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm someone who for years interviewed Holocaust survivors. And in today's world, I just think there are too many ignorant people out there who will look at the humor and take it literally. It's giving them fodder for more hate.
So, but are you talking about, right, but are you talking about the issue we haven't got to yet, which is humor about the Holocaust? We're talking right now just humor in general about Nazis, Germans.
Well, I mean, you know, you've got the white supremacists. I mean, I don't think you have to give them any more ammunition.
Okay.
So that's more or less about the Nazis.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to mute you for a second, and we're going to get Bruce. It says Bruce and Miller, so hold on. Okay. So you have to unmute yourself, Bruce. If you're there, you want Bruce, and it says Bruce and Miller.
Yeah. Okay. Hogan's Heroes.
Yes.
Was a TV series about Nazis.
Yes, and it actually appears in this film.
Yeah. Okay.
But did you have a question? Well, let's take Hogan's Heroes real quick.
I was just referring to that. Yeah, and I haven't seen the film yet. But
do you have any issues with Hogan's Heroes as a satire comedy about the Holocaust? Not directly, but about Germans. Okay.
Not about the Holocaust, yes, but about Nazis, no.
Okay, we'll do one more. Paula Friedman. Okay, so Paula, I've unmuted. I've invited you in. If you unmute yourself, you can ask your question or give us your input.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wonder how, speaking of Nazis, I'm talking about Nazis as people and process. How can it be funny to make humor about people and a process that killed over 6 million people?
So that's a good question. Again, we're focusing, I think, directly on just making fun of like Hitler, as opposed to the process, which we're going to get to. And I think that your question is very valid, and that's what I'm leading up to. I'm trying to get up there in a way that, which I'm sure is what you were thinking, Ferne, when you made the movie, to kind of take us through this process from what maybe is easier comedy to, I mean, I will telegraph. So we're talking about easier comedy about Nazis, harder comedy about the Holocaust, and I think, from my perspective, the hardest thing, which is non-Jewish comedians who have comedy about the Holocaust. And you've taken us through, and also the edgier comedy. Is that what you were thinking when you made the film, using that?
Well, I think it was, you know, exploring all these different questions. So, you know, who can make the joke? Do you have to be Jewish? Do you have to have a connection to the Holocaust personally in your family history? What happens if you're not Jewish? What happens if you're not Jewish and you're a neo-Nazi? I mean, so all of that, those are all questions. What is the context? Who are you telling the joke to? You know, what works to some people may not work for others, and I have a lot I can say on that, but I think you want me to keep that one brief.
Okay. So I'll read you some of the input that people typed in real quick. Jake Jacob says, making fun of Nazis, yes. Making fun of Germans, not so sure.
But we were talking, I think when you asked me,
yeah.
I think it's okay, I was talking about Nazis. I wasn't talking about Germans.
Okay.
I was saying a punch up to Nazis.
But there are obviously a lot of jokes about Germans to this day in general, right?
That's not just to be clear, I was talking about Hitler jokes and, you know, German and a Nazi.
Okay. In the uniform and the.
Yeah.
Marianne Pilot asked, wondering the film clips do not appear on the screen. Why? I think that's your issue on your screen, Marianne, because I think other people can see the screen. So you have to just double check how you're seeing this webinar. Marilyn Spielberg, I need a maybe. So she's saying, it's not that I'm okay totally or I'm not okay maybe. And it probably could be maybe depending on the context and what the joke is doing. And so we'll get there also. It's the same question, I guess, that's going to come up. Anonymous attendee asks, how do I see the entire movie? Where can I find it? So I know that people who are on our list who've signed up, I've sent a link to the movie that they can watch on Vimeo with a password, and it's good till Wednesday. So if you're on a list, you can email me. I'll give you the link, and you can watch it till Wednesday. If not, how can people watch it? Is there another way for them to, can they see it on Netflix, on Amazon?
It's on Amazon Prime. And it's soon going to also be on iTunes and maybe another way. So I can send the link so that you can send it out to everybody and they can share that. Does that sound good?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then I'm going to have another poll, another interactive opportunity for you guys out there. And let's see if this works. Stop the share results. Okay. So the next poll. This is called Holocaust humor. Is it okay for Jewish comedians to use humor in connection with the Holocaust? And this is really the meat of the movie. It's the meat of our discussion, so I want to get there. And you can say yes, you can say no, you can say maybe. It depends on the joke, the context. And this is what we're going to be discussing. So I'm launching the poll. And this is your opportunity, again, to use your fingers to wake up, to participate. And it'll be interesting to see what the results are as they come in. What's kind of cool is, I don't know if you guys can see it. Can you see it, Fern? Can you see like live results coming in?
Yeah.
Okay, so we see live results coming in. While people are voting, a question for you. Is there anything that surprised you that you learned in making the movie? I assume that you had your vision. You said that the movie ended up very close to your vision. Tell me something, or share with us something that you learned. Something
that I was stunned about was Mel Brooks's response. Because I grew up thinking, oh, Mel Brooks, fearless, will do anything,
right.
No boundaries, nothing. But that's not true. I mean, he makes, that is this very discussion. He makes a distinct line between, he will make jokes about the Nazis. He will not make jokes about the camps. He will not make jokes about the Holocaust. And what I didn't realize is when I started this, and even in the years of research, that if I said Holocaust joke, in my mind, I was talking about a joke he would make. So I had this thing that, like with the interview questions, I had a base of interview questions that I asked to everybody. And then what I would do is, somebody would say yes, and I do massive research on that person and anything that they, worked on with that sort of stuff and add it to it. And in the beginning, I didn't want the comedians to not be funny. Like I didn't want them to be afraid to be funny because it's a very important topic. Obviously, it's a very serious topic. So I decided to start every interview with, do you have a Holocaust joke, to sort of break the ice? And what I noticed from like the first 5 interviews in a row, they'd say, well, I don't have a Holocaust joke, but I do have a Nazi joke. And then they would tell the joke. And I didn't even connect the dots until like about the 5th interview. I was like, oh my God, that's the same response. Like there's a distinction in the comedy world that I wasn't making. So then I would start every interview with, well, I started every interview with, do you have a Holocaust joke? But I realized that that there's this distinction between Nazi joke and Holocaust. What do you have? And then I would get that.
Well, that's where I picked it up from your show, so you did very well. Did the comedians require, like, did Mel Brooks say, well, before you can show this film, I've got to see the final cut? Or did they basically say, we're going to do the interview, look forward to seeing it in the movie theater? Did they have any?
Mostly that. I don't think I showed it to anybody before it was over. And a number of comedians, all the New York-based comedians, all came to our premiere in New York.
Wow.
Which was incredible.
Results. Is it okay for Jewish communities to use humor in connection with the Holocaust? Yes, 22%. No, 14%. 64% says depends on the joke, the context, etc. So let's explore this. Let's see some clips and have a discussion. Okay. We're gonna try this share screen again. I always get scared when I have to do this.
When I was a kid in the mountains, I would do was ist gemacht und Schleswig ist innig gemacht in Juden was haben. And I would get a lot of laughs with Hitler. And a few Jews after the show would say, you know, that's not in such good taste, you know? And I'd say, I don't care. I really don't give a shit what's in good taste.
No comedian ever in the Catskills would come and tell jokes about the Holocaust. They would string this guy up.
You know what I was careful about, honestly? I would do this a lot, but I wouldn't wear the swastika. Not for a while, not till I did the producers.
Humor healed us, especially in the Catskills. You know, we would go and my mother would laugh like I never saw her laugh. There was a release because we were, you know, it was like a kind of a community where they felt safe and they weren't the other.
I started writing jokes for stand-up comedians who played in the Catskill Mountains. I was 21, they were like 50, 55. I was a generation removed from that.
Jokes about your wives in those days. Terrible, you hear about the man in room 302. He came back, he found his best friend in bed with his wife. He said, Morris, I have to, but you.
I would write some jokes for them about, you know, that my uncle was an all-round camper at Auschwitz, okay? And they would laugh in the car, or the band would laugh, but there's not a chance in hell that you can tell that to an audience.
I was very brave then. Maybe I'm not so brave now, but I was very, very brave because it was in questionable taste in 1948 when I worked in right 2 years, 3 years after the end of the war, to be doing Hitler bits.
Time makes a difference. Obviously, nobody cares if you do Inquisition jokes.
The Inquisition.
Let's begin.
The Inquisition.
Look out, Sam.
We have a mission to convert the Jews. Had I done The Inquisition as a movie in 1492, I would have been in a lot of trouble. But enough time had gone by. Confess, don't be boring. 5 centuries had gone by, and so it was okay. It's better to lose your skull cap than your skull.
Somebody once said, tragedy plus time equals comedy. And I always felt like, why wait?
It's time opens up different avenues of thought and acceptance.
So I'll bring us back here. So that clip, the reason I showed that clip, and I am watching time, there's so much to cover. That clip really is your focus, which is how much time can go by between the event and the comedy. And these comedians are basically saying there's certain things, you know, there's enough time that's gone by between the Holocaust and now, so we can start having comedy about it. So I guess my question for you is,
yeah.
Okay, I'm giving. Does that apply to other things going on right now? Do we have to wait? I mean, this concept that what you're analyzing here about the Holocaust is obviously something that you meant to apply to other tragedies and other historical events that have gone on or are going on right now. So what's your thought on how much time you need between the actual event and the comedy?
Well, it depends. I mean, let's back up a little to COVID. You know, when people started making jokes about that, they were not making jokes about the people who died or the people who got sick. They were making jokes about living through quarantine and like, like wanting to, get rid of your partner because you're going crazy. Like it was a release valve. It was, how do we, make the best of it? Because humor is for healing. So are you asking me, can we make jokes right now about, George Floyd? Absolutely not. Can we, it's that whole punching up or punching down, going back to your poll when you said, is it okay for Jewish comedians to use connection with the Holocaust? What I tried to type, but that window went away for me, was the comedians 100% would say, well, it has to be funny. If it's funny, it's okay. That is a comedian's perspective. But, and then Larry Charles in my film talks about, if it's still taboo, you can't really joke about it because there will be consequences. So if it's to the point where we can make the joke, even though it feels taboo, even though it may make you feel uncomfortable or embarrassed, it's not taboo. People are feeling that way and they're expressing it. Does that make sense?
Right. One of the people you interviewed, I forget his name, but he was the writer with Curb Your Enthusiasm, I think, or
Larry Charles. That's who I was just quoting.
Larry Charles. I think he says that really the role of the comedian is to address contemporary issues, and that in a way, the more the taboo, the more important. You just have to do a good joke, but it's not. Humor is supposed to help people, and so you can't. Letting too much time go is not. I mean, I'm putting words in his mouth. That's what he said, right?
Exactly. Okay.
Before we go to
you see a ton. Okay, let me rephrase. I mean, you see a lot of jokes right now on Black Lives. Like if you see, it's like who's telling the joke. That's a huge
right
thing. But Michael Che has an incredible set that he has on Black Lives Matter. Chris Rock has an incredible set right now that's from actually a couple years ago, but about police brutality. So these things in the right hands, again, that's like a Jewish person making a Holocaust joke. That is considered okay. Well, it's okay when Michael Che makes a joke about that, or Chris Rock makes a joke about a few bad apples in the police department. It is all context, and it's who tells the joke. But it is when those two jokes, for example, get right to the heart of the matter. It's very now, and it's effective.
Okay. Someone asked, "Did you try to get Billy Crystal?" They were surprised that Billy Crystal was not in this movie.
Well, like I said, there were about 150 comedians I wanted to get, and of course he was at the top. There are some comedians we knew we would never get, and I had to weigh it. It was like, again, Mel Brooks, he was number one, or equal number one with Sarah Silverman. It represented, I feel like, the kind of comedy that he does was represented in the film. You know, I had a lot of, you know, male Jewish comedians. It was, you know, trying to get more women, trying to get more whatever.
Right.
So if I could have kept going and going, I would have loved to. It was hard to get him.
Did you hear back from any of the comedians after they saw the final show and what they thought about it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, in New York, all of the comedians that were in the film came to our premiere, along with Renee and Renee Firestone, who you will meet soon. And they, you know, were incredibly gracious about it. You know, I'm doing an event this summer with Alan Zweibel, who continues to be a huge fan of the film. You know, Judy Gold, Gilbert Gottfried. I mean, because I'm in New York, I've spent more time with the New York comedians, but, you know, they have been incredibly supportive. And when the film was coming out, they were posting about it on their social media platforms and stuff. So I couldn't have been happier with the response.
Okay. Let's see another clip or two, and then we'll wrap it up with our special guests. And now we're going to push the comedy a little bit, and we're going to see what people think about how far you can go with Holocaust jokes. So let's give this a shot.
I'll take 20th century history, Adolf.
The cause of the sinking of the Titanic.
What is an iceberg?
No, I'm sorry. The correct response is, what were the Jews?
Hello, Mr. Alexander?
This is really inappropriate. This is offensive. I'm sorry. I can't follow this. I'm sorry. I can't go on after this.
Didn't you do Nazi stuff on Seinfeld?
Yeah, that's an entirely different situation.
I think Jerry Seinfeld has been known to say that standards and practices helped him make a funnier show because you can't go the easy route.
You were making out during Schindler's List?
It's harder to conceptually contain yourself within the boundaries and still truly be funny. And Seinfeld, to me, is the classic example.
Medium turkey chili.
The one regret I do have of all of the years of standards in terms of Holocaust humor is the soup Nazi.
I didn't get any bread.
Just forget it, let it go.
I think the notion of Nazi being used as a very mild pejorative does trivialize that experience. And I had no clue at the time that that would enter the lexicon in the way that it has.
I don't see the society collapsing as a result of the soup Nazi.
Nothing for you.
That's Larry's skill, to be able to find the way into a subject that makes it palatable to people. So is that even a taboo at that point? You know, that's the question.
Oh, the rabbi said he's bringing a survivor tomorrow. Should I have my father bring his friend Solly?
Yeah.
Do survivors like seeing each other?
Well, when I first saw the outline for the Survivor episode, I kind of, you know, there's a gut reaction that I have to certain things. The Holocaust is one of them. There's a sensitivity. I'm Jewish, you know, they can come back and wipe me and my family out. And, you know, so there's always a little that you feel, this little thing up your spine.
Where's the other survivor?
So here we are in a region of Australia, the world's 10 most deadly snakes. 9 of them inhabit this region. It was harrowing.
That's a very interesting story. I was in a concentration camp. You never even suffered 1 minute in your life compared to what I went through.
All survivors talk like that? Mom, wait, I can't hear it.
Look, I'm saying we spent 42 days trying to survive. We had very little rations, no snacks.
Snacks? When you talking snacks? We didn't eat sometimes for a week.
Did you guys have a bathroom?
A bathroom?
We didn't have
We
one.
had 12 people at a time. You don't
aggravate
know
yourself
nothing
here.
about survival. I'm a survivor.
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 I don't think this is funny.
We expect more from Jews, a greater sensitivity, and maybe it's not fair. I understand why we're laughing. Why are they laughing? What are they laughing at?
I'm just going to show the next clip real quick because they're related, and then we'll finish our discussion on this and have our special guest. So hold on.
You can't control how your joke will be inferred. You know, I had a friend, Tom Giannis, who would call it mouthful of blood laughs, you know, where they're laughing at the wrong thing. And that's hard, but it's just no longer yours.
My Nana was a survivor of the Holocaust, or I'm sorry, alleged Holocaust. And she had the tattoo, you know, the number, and thank God she was at one of the better concentration camps. She had a vanity number. It said, bedazzled, which is kind of fun.
You know, I talked about the Holocaust and I said the alleged Holocaust, and that's a joke about Holocaust deniers. And, you know, and a sophisticated audience would understand that, and maybe a less sophisticated audience may not. I'm not saying that I'm sophisticated, but what are the dangers of that? That maybe a group of people will think that the Holocaust didn't happen? I think that's worth the risk. I think it's worth the risk.
Oh my goodness.
I am so sorry I'm late, and I apologize.
Yeah, this is, I waited for you too long.
I beg your pardon. They had sent this big stretch Mercedes limo for us, and a
I wanted to stop there. I have a lot to show. I just wanted to show a little bit of the edgy stuff. So if you've watched the film, there's a lot of edgy stuff. And a quick question for you, and then I want to bring our guest in. So when you get towards the end of the film, you show Sarah Silverman, Sacha Baron Cohen, and they are definitely the edge. Is there an edge? Is there a place you wouldn't go with humor about the Holocaust?
Absolutely. I mean, this is, maybe you want to include Renee and Claire now.
Yes.
Because this is the story that is connected to them.
So for those of you who are with us, it's 160. We have a special guest, and we're going to try get them here if I can find them. So
They said that she just texted me to say that she got closed off, like, I don't know, bounced off or something.
Uh-oh, she needs to come back in because she may be on a thing that only allows her like a certain amount of time.
Oh,
so
I have her re-click the link.
Yeah, try that. So the special guest we have, if you've watched the film, and as you've heard at the beginning when Ferne was talking about it, the film is not just interview with comedians. It has an opening, closing, and middle, which is an interview or a piece with Renee Firestone, who's a Holocaust survivor. She just turned 96. And she's the linchpin, the pivot point of the film because she watches some of these comedians and you get to see her reaction. And we asked if she would come on and she said yes. So hopefully we can, I see her right there. So we're going to have Renee join us and we're going to ask questions. So let's see, promote to panelist. Let's see if we can find Renee. So Claire, I just promoted you guys to a panelist. And when you come on, please remember to unmute. We're just waiting for them to come. In the meantime, please, if you're in the audience.
Answering that question, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking for them. So why don't you start answering the question? If you have, if you're in the audience and you're an attendee and now you have something to say about the limits of Holocaust humor, please do add it to the Q&A. I'll try to get it to Ferne as well. So yes, so from your perspective.
So, well, you know what? I can also add, if there is a question now from the, I see a question there now. Should I address that?
Jake, yes.
Go ahead.
Jake Jacobs wants to know, did you make back your money on the film? So you had your investment, you were able to make your money back and pay off the people that invested? No. Well, it's a very successful film. You were at the Tribeca Film Festival. You've shown it around the world. So you weren't able to get the money back to pay off the original investors?
Well, I will be paying a percentage to my investor till, till I'm done. Not, I mean, it's in perpetuity. She lost connection again. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, she can try again when she's, I have it on the screen. So as soon as she gets in, I can get her into our panel.
Okay. Well, I can go back to that question that I was going to say that when you asked me, do I personally have a line? And I did have a line, the kinds of jokes that, the mean-spirited ones that were just, there's no looking at it from any other angle, like those jokes you used to hear, like what's the difference between a pizza and a Jew? Those jokes,
No. I'm not sure I want the answer. Yes.
Well, a pizza doesn't scream when you put it in the oven.
Okay.
Like that. So those kinds of jokes, I had no reason to analyze them. There's no useful thing for those jokes. But because I filmed with Renee and Claire and they were like looking at Holocaust jokes on YouTube and looking at these different comedians like Sarah Silverman and Ricky Gervais and all these different comedians, we came across a site that was just listing jokes. And it was all those kind of jokes. And it was horrible. And I was filming them and they were reading off the computer and their heads were like kind of blocking the computer. So it was a technically difficult scene to film because it's not like you're watching a clip and I can hear what's going on. And they're reading the jokes. And it was just, one was more horrible than the next. And then the only thing funny about the scene was that they started to giggle. And Renee read the last joke on it. And the joke was, why did Hitler really commit suicide? He got the gas bill. So when you hear Renee tell that joke and she's giggling, it's different. It's a different joke. But I still, in the end, did not think it was worthy of making it into the film because that was my line. In the film you see I'm sorry, that's Claire trying to get on. You see, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Where you have the cutoff of certain jokes, and you said like maybe a Holocaust survivor telling a joke is going to be at a different cutoff than a comedian telling a joke, and maybe it depends on whether it's a Jewish comedian or a non-Jewish comedian, is my guess. Again, we're trying to get Renee on, so those of you who watch the movie, okay, so
appreciate the opportunity.
I wanted to quit and start over.
Okay. I have another question for you, don't worry,
yes.
while she's doing it. Yes. So you've shown this film around the world, I assume.
Yes.
I want to know what the different audience reception was for, United States versus Israel, Holocaust survivors versus younger people, Poland, different parts of the United States. So give me an idea of what the reception was like in different communities and sub-communities.
That's a great question. We had our premiere in New York. It was a lot of New York kind of humor. So it did really, really well at the premiere. Of course, the comedians were there, it was a very open crowd to this. So then I went directly from there to my European premiere, which was in Munich. And it was a completely different response and I had known this because I had an Austrian intern at one point who was watching, the film to make sure that like right before the festival premiered, just to see if there were any technical problems. And my producer was with him and she kept texting me. I wasn't there. And she kept saying, he's not laughing. He's not laughing. Didn't know he was Austrian. He was Austrian-American, no accent. And finally he finishes and she said, he's like, no problems. It's great. And she said, well, did you like the film? He goes, I loved it. And she said, really? Because you didn't laugh once? He said, I'm Austrian. I'm not allowed to laugh at those jokes.
Right.
So that knowing that and going to Munich was very helpful because there was not a sound made during the film. However, this was very upsetting. There was not one joke about that they laughed at about the Holocaust, but it was almost like the tension of not laughing, that when a joke was made not about the Holocaust but alluding to a joke about a Jewish stereotype, then they laughed. And they almost laughed too hard because they'd been holding in the other. So I spent a lot of time at the Q&A talking about that and how uncomfortable that was and whatnot. And then I went from Munich to Israel, where I had a premiere at the Jerusalem Film Festival. And that was a completely different response. So, you know, but
In what way? In what way? What was the response in Israel?
There were two screenings there. The first one was at the Cinematech, and it was a very academic crowd, very international, very open. The second screening was in an Orthodox neighborhood, and modern Orthodox neighborhood, and it was just a really, really fascinating conversation. I think people came in to see it worried for obvious reasons, worried, ready to not like it, and they were surprised by how much they did like it. The Q&A was so important that instead of ending it when they had to show the next film, we moved it into the lobby and continued. And there was one woman who was really worried about certain things and perceptions. And once we talked about it at this Q&A, she's like, okay, that makes sense. And she was fine. So.
What about, I assume you showed it to Holocaust survivors. What was their reaction to the film?
Well, I think the fact that Renee is in the film and she gives us permission to laugh. And I think that the fact that I did this in a sensitive way and I didn't exploit the humor, you know, there was hardly anyone who was upset about it. I have had discussions with a couple survivors here and there, and we've talked very honestly about it. There have been a couple people, but on the whole, not so much. It has not been, you know, it hasn't been a problem. And one of the greatest surprises was, because these aren't stories that you hear, right? You don't, you know, when people want to know about your history with the Holocaust, they're talking about, you know, your family history and all these very serious things. But it was almost this opportunity for people who had stories in their families, you know, passed down, you know, a funny story that my grandparents or whatever. And they were coming out in droves, these stories that I hadn't heard. Oh, that reminds me of my grandmother. Or that wasn't like my, you know, like that was the opposite of the experience. I didn't know you could laugh. I got both of that as a response.
Peter Mesnick asks, what projects are you working on right now? What's your new?
Well, it's interesting.
I
am considering a project that's sort of a sequel to this, where I, you know, walk outside of the comfort of my own community and ask these questions in somebody else's community. And I open this up to discussions of race and what can and can't be talked about, and can it be used as a way for dialogue.
Okay. I'm looking at notes. Pat Hutt says, humor is a way of reminding people of an issue. Hopefully it can be done without provoking a bad response or hurting people. Making fun of Nazis is a way of saying we don't agree with your philosophies, and we're reminding people of where your philosophies took people in the past. Only those who have lived through the Holocaust can share how humor helped them survive. If they can laugh, so can I. Which I think supports your intuition of making the film with a Holocaust survivor like Renee, as opposed to just doing a film on humor with the comedians. You built in very touching scenes, and you know, we may end, and I'll show, if we can't get Renee on, I may show the last scene of the film where she's in the boat in Las Vegas, and you get to see her with another Holocaust survivor and their views of the world. So it's a great scene. In fact, maybe I'll show that scene, and if we can get Renee on, we will. And if not, we definitely tried.
They're trying something else. Let's hope.
Okay, so hold on, everybody. Let's do this.
You can't control
volare. Whoa, dooba 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 dooba, cantare. Whoa, volare. Whoa, cantare. Whoa.
Did you enjoy that? I like to hear the song, but I could not enjoy it.
Why not? With an Italian singing a beautiful song.
Because I remember for so many youngsters who were perished and they can't enjoy this beautiful place.
But you know, you survived, you're alive. How can you not have pleasure out of the fact that you survived?
Always I remember the children screaming, the selection. You know, that is like an our shadow. You cannot forget.
You cannot live in the shadow of those cries. You have to remember it, but you cannot live in those shadows.
I don't live in the shadow, but the shadow is following me all my life.
You know, I speak about the Holocaust all the time, but I enjoy life. I am so happy that I have 3 great-grandchildren. Could Hitler imagine that I will survive and have 3 great-grandchildren? I mean, that's my revenge.
Uh-oh. No, nothing happened.
Okay, we have you. So everybody, very happy that this worked out. We have Renee and Claire Firestone. Both appear in the movie. Renee, I understand you can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, yay!
Yay. So we're very, very fortunate. This is our surprise. We were working on to have Renee with us. Renee, it's really an honor. And Claire, you both appear in this movie. You play a big role in the movie. We were talking to Ferne about the importance and that this movie wasn't just an interview with comedians. It was built around Renee and her life and her experience and her thoughts. And we enjoyed watching her reactions to these different comedians. And so thank you for joining us. And I guess, Renee, let's ask you the question. So what's your thought about comedy and the Holocaust? Or do you want to ask Ferne? Did you want to say something?
No. Oh. Well, let's see what she says and I'll see if I can remember.
Okay, so yeah, Renee, your view on comedy and the Holocaust, comedy and Nazis, is there a difference in your mind? And should we be able to have this kind of humor? And is there a limit to it? There are many questions. You can answer any of them, all of them, but yeah, please, your thoughts.
As long as I'm alive, I think comedy should be part of my life like everybody else's. And yes, I like comedy. I like jokes. About the Holocaust? Even about the Holocaust, yes. But what about if non-Jews are telling the jokes? Man, that's different. But that's what he's asking.
Oh, well, I have many questions. That's just one question.
Other people, who can make the jokes? When can they make the survivors can make the jokes. They are the only ones that can. And they do.
But there are times you have admitted that you will laugh at a Mel Brooks joke, yes?
Yes, of course. She has, of course. But again, I like humor, and it has nothing to do anymore with the past, what I do today. The past is past, it's gone. And I live my life today the way I like to live my life.
Ferne, there was some quote I think you asked me or mentioned.
Do you remember when we were in Montana and somebody said to you, they asked you what you first thought when I asked you to be in the film, and you said at first you thought I was crazy, and then you thought about it and how there can be humor, like you thought back, and that's when you remembered the tonsil story or other stories that you might have remembered. But the thing that you said that was the most meaningful to me, and I will always cherish, was when you said, you know, that you had been in a lot of Holocaust movies, but this was the first movie that you knew of that was about the humanity of the Holocaust. Because only if you are human can you laugh. Where all the other Holocaust movies are always about the inhumanity and what you had to do to survive.
That's true. I agree still.
Claire, do you have a different perspective than your mom on comedy? So I think what your mom said was Holocaust survivors can definitely say funny things about the Holocaust or have jokes. Do you have a different line? Can Jewish comedians make fun of the Holocaust?
You know, it's a fine line for me because one of the things that I inherited from my mother was a good sense of humor. And she has an amazing sense of humor. And we find the humor in all kinds of things and the absurdity of life. And I like all different kinds of humor. I don't like so much toilet humor, but I will laugh at pratfalls, or I'll laugh at a good pun, a good wordplay. But I do have a problem with who tells the joke still. Yeah. And whether I can, I'm very good about reading in between the lines. So whether I can tell if there's any anti-Semitism behind it. If I sense anything there, then the joke will fall on me like lead.
Oh, sorry.
But also, you know, if something is inherently funny in and of itself, if the joke itself was a good joke, but for the fact that it was about the Holocaust, then the knee-jerk reaction is to laugh at it because it's a good play. But still, again, like I say, depending on who's saying it, is how I will take it.
Yeah, that of course matters who's saying it.
But you know, I don't know if you remember, but when you were watching jokes on YouTube, you know, we showed different kinds of jokes, what worked, what didn't. You know, Sarah Silverman's Jewish, Ricky Gervais is not Jewish. But then when Lisa Lampanelli told her joke, which to me, even though it crosses a line, I thought it was important to show a joke that crosses a line, and it wasn't okay with you when you watched it. You know, the other jokes you sometimes would say, I don't think it's funny, I'm not offended. But that one offended you, and it's because of what you're saying, Claire. It crossed a line into mean-spirited. It was no longer.
Yeah, exactly. It depends who does the joke. Look, Don DeLuise was an insult comedian. And he was an equal opportunity insulter. Same with Joan Rivers. They could tell those kind of jokes, and you knew that there wasn't the mean spirit behind it, even though it was insulting. But when you can tell, then it absolutely is offensive and crosses the line.
Let me ask Renee in our last few minutes. Obviously, you've lived a life, and we're so happy. I mean, I'm so happy to have met you. I'm so happy to meet you now in this online environment, but to watch you in the film was very touching and, you know, very beautiful. It made the film into something. It raised the level of the film, which was very high, to another level. So it was kudos to you and to Ferne for including you and for you participating, and Claire as well. But I understand you're a crusader still in your life against evils in the world. Leave us with something that you're working on, some message, something that we should be thinking about. Please.
Uplifting, because we need uplifting today.
Well, you know, it's up to the person who's telling the joke. He's trying to.
I want you to leave us with an uplifting message.
Oh,
an overall message. What message do you want to leave?
Oh, my uplifting message is
we need hope right now.
That you have to do the best can do for yourself and for others. You cannot be only concerned with yourself. You have to think about what's going on in the world. How can you be involved? How can you improve? That's who you are. That's who I am. That's all I care about. If I hear something that's not right, then I speak up. I'm not quiet anymore, like we used to be. Don't say anything, against the Holocaust or against the Jews or non-Jews. No, you can tell, you can say whatever's on your mind, but you always have to be concerned about who you're talking to and what you are saying. And what does it mean, what you're saying? What is it you want to say? You want to improve something, or you want to be angry at somebody? It depends on what you're saying.
Well, I wanted to thank you again. We've run over time. I usually keep our programs very tight, but we had a lot of material, and we really wanted to get you, Renee, and you, Claire, into the program. So I wanted to thank you both for joining us. I know it was hard, but you didn't give up. So thank you.
Thank you for doing the program. All I can tell you is that I didn't think that I'm going to be here for this program.
Oh, well, we're very happy that you're here and that you're here for the program. And Ferne, thank you for making this great film and sharing it with us. And those of you out there who haven't had a chance to watch it, I sent you all, and there's Ferne's daughter.
She's finished saying
Supposed to be at summer camp. Yes.
Hi.
Well, we have mother-daughter, so it's fine, Ferne.
Yes,
Ferne, it's great.
exactly.
But I want to thank you all. This conversation will continue. It's an important one to have. Humor is very important. We need a lot of humor right now, but also it's important to the nature of the humor.
Yes. And everybody see the film because it's very different than any other Holocaust film. If you haven't seen the whole thing, it's worth everything.
Right, so thank you.
Thank you.
I will share the link. If you didn't get it, email me. I'll give you the link and the password. It'll be good till Wednesday. Thank you again, Renee and Claire. Thank you, Ferne. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us for an extra 20 minutes. Have a good and hopefully a humorous rest of your Sunday, in good taste humor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.